Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the one who has plenty of board games guilty pleasures.
Sarah?
Cause fish.
Oh, fish, gills, got
Yes.
it.
Okay, and today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Finspan. If you're curious about our opinions, check out our other video, Rolling with Reviews, Finspan. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. In Finspan, players are marine researchers seeking to find an array of aquatic life in the world's oceans. The fish cards that players discover generate various benefits, such as drawing more fish cards, laying eggs, hatching eggs into young, and then forming schools of fish. At the end of 4 rounds, the winner is the player with the most points. All right, Will, so how does the game change for 2 players?
There are no changes for 2 players. There's not even a bot.
Nope.
There might be one if
Yeah,
solo.
this solo always has a Tama.
Yes, so if you want to play with a Nanaman diver, Nana Crusoe, you can solo it. Okay.
Okay, so the issues at a 2-player count. There's when you play the normal game. So there's a beginner game which has goals pre-printed on the board. They're balanced and they make the intro game, really easy to understand. When you play a regular game, you're going to randomize the goal tiles onto the board, and whoever each week gets the most points gets an extra 3 points. So
that's rough in a 2-player.
Yeah,
because of the spread of
right.
points.
So you already only have 2 players. One person is ahead of the other, then they get farther ahead. So it's again.
I need that. The top 1%.
You need to be. So it's just it creates a bigger divide, and it might not be so bad in a higher player count game.
Yeah.
So honestly, if you don't like it, just don't play with the rule, because it's a rule you have to apply. So.
Right.
And you don't use it in the intro game.
Yeah, because a more skilled player can take into consideration all the goals and just plan for it, and therefore always be ahead because of just better, smarter playing.
Yeah.
And that's why it can be really, really rough to do it in a 2-player game.
Agreed. All right, and the other big issue, which we've had with other span games in both Wingspan and Wormspan, you're going to see fewer fish because fewer fish are just coming out. But here it's more because there are fish that give benefits to everybody. And so you're just not going to see those.
For example, a fish that activates says all players get to lay an egg for the fish. And so if you don't see those number of fish, you don't have that synergy that's coming from all directions of different players.
Right.
You're just limited, and it's not the fact that you can damage other people's fish or take their fish away.
No, it's all positive player interaction.
Yeah, what you get is yours, so that's fine. It doesn't affect you that way. It's just that extra level of bonuses is gone.
Yeah. But those were really it. Those 2 things are issues. But what it does well, if it's better on the table because of the vertical boards, which we'll talk about in the accessibility section, the vertical boards take up a lot of space. And so fitting 4 players at a table might be very challenging.
Yeah, so we're sitting at a 3-foot by 6-foot table.
Yeah.
And when you put a vertical board out, it practically takes the entire width of the board front to back. So yeah, if 4 players on a table this size, you're going to have to squeeze in with everybody interlacing their boards just to fit.
2 people sitting closer to one side, and then 2 people on the other side sitting closer to the other side, just so you can have it off kilter.
Yeah.
So that is a slightly unfortunate part. And then the other thing, or I guess good at a 2-player count, is you don't need as much room. But it's also easier to compete for the goals only having 1 player. So as much as the 3-point bonus doesn't feel good, it isn't as difficult to try to go for the goals, or it's easier to keep track of.
Yeah, which is also why it might feel a little unbalanced, because the better player can more easily track the goal and affect it and win and get ahead more.
Yeah, so that's that. But that's it for the 2-player experience.
Accessibility?
Accessibility. So going back to those vertical boards, what also is not great is it's not good for people with short arms. So not only is it going to be a table space issue, if you're playing with younger people who have shorter arms, or just people in general who have shorter arms. Not so good.
No play with Tyrannosaurus Rex the gamer.
Yeah. Fish cards have a lot of restrictions on, how to play them, where to play them. The one that we seemed to miss a lot was when it was specified for a column, because the information is on the right-hand side of the card, but almost all of the how to play the card is on the left-hand side of the card.
Yeah, what does it need to eat, whether it's an egg or a young or a school or eat another fish, or and then which horizontal row it needs to be on, whether it's in the daylight, the twilight, or the midnight sections. And so all that information is really nicely grouped, and you don't even think to look at the right side of the board.
Because the right side is usually where you look for the activation, after you've played it, or as you're activating a column, it'll have this, or at the end of the game. All that information is on the right-hand side. So they put a color band, and so the good thing about the color band is they are different shapes.
Yeah.
So even if you're having trouble differentiating the colors,
and they did choose very light colors, blue, purple, and green.
Right.
So.
But how it looks is distinct, and you can match it up to the column, because the column printed on the board also has the same pattern. So you can literally just match the card to the column.
Yeah, I think blue is was it coral?
I think so.
Yeah.
They're slightly abstract-ish things.
But they're very distinct.
They're very distinct. The problem just really is it's on the right-hand side. So it's very easy especially when you're first playing, there's so much information on all the cards. It's really easy to miss that one.
Yeah.
We got the deluxe upgrade kit, which is purchased separately. You get really cool fish and school meeples and 3-dimensional eggs that are slightly squishy. There is a flattish bottom to one of it, to the egg, but it's not easy to feel for it. So I found that I kept putting the eggs on upside down, and they would roll around, which is obviously the point of having the flat side. So it takes a few extra moments.
Yeah, this was funny because Sarah's usually used to seeing stuff.
Yeah.
So that's not very visible, but it's easy for someone like me who can feel.
Yeah, he had no problem putting the eggs on his board.
And I'm like, what are you doing? She's bouncing her eggs all over the place.
Yeah. So the only thing I can say there is don't get rid of your cardboard tokens. We kept them in the cardboard, what do you call that?
The chit board.
The chit board.
Punch out.
And we kept it at the bottom of the box to keep everything raised. So we have them accessible if we should need them. Kind of recommend the same for you. If you get the deluxe components and you don't like the eggs, just use the cardboard bits. They will be a lot easier.
Or what you can do is then combine the two together and glue the cardboard to the bottom of the eggs.
Sure, you could. I mean, if you're using the meeples for the young, because the problem is the cardboard chits are dual-sided. So the eggs and the young are on opposite sides. However, if you've got...
Because when you hatch an egg, it flips over to a young.
Right. But if you have meeples, then you can use that. So there's lots of ways to get around it. It's not a big deal. Just wanted to warn people. The eggs can get a little bouncy if you can't easily feel where the flat bottom is. We kind of already talked about this. There's a lot of information on the cards. And where that also can be a problem is with this game, your hand of cards is laid out on the table face up as public information. The problem being is no one, even you, can read it while it's laying on the table.
Yeah.
So,
or if it's on your board, farthest away from you.
Yeah.
You're like, what did I put up there again? Hold on.
You'll be picking up your cards a lot is really the downside. So for me, after a while, I kind of just grouped my cards into groups of this is what I want to play, this is what I don't want to play. Granted, if Will could see, maybe that would give him an advantage, but honestly, I had to read his cards to him, and I would always have to pick up his cards because I couldn't read them from a distance. So again, it's not a big complaint because there's a lot of information on the cards, and it needs to be.
Yeah, plus you also have a lot of options on how you want to store or organize your cards. Do you want to do it by size? Because everyone will have a certain length for the fish. Or do you want to by the column it goes in? Or by the row it will go in? Or
by what it eats.
Or what it eats, or what it does.
Or your own priority list.
Right. By name, alphabetical.
Oh, geez. Yes, you could. You could. So it's just one of those things to note is because you're supposed to have your hand of cards laid out visibly on the table for everyone. You'll be picking up the cards a lot. Talk to the people at your table. If they don't really care to know what you have, then you can do it the way you want. Like, I almost grabbed a card holder just to have the cards upright in front of me. But again, you'll have to deal with your game group as to how they want to handle it.
I think the more important thing is just how many cards do you have in your hand?
Yeah, that actually is probably the most important information because then you get a sense of what people can and can't do.
Right.
And like Will was alluding to, the cards on your boards, you might need to pick them up. It's just after a certain point, you might not be able to because there will be stuff on top, like eggs and young. And I mean, you don't
And other cards.
And other cards underneath of it, or even on top as cards eat cards. So it's just things can get a little messy. That's kind of typical in a span game. All wingspan, worm span. That it just, you kind of, I mean, the good news is...
Span. The meat processing span game that they haven't made yet.
The good news is you usually don't have more than one or two, like maybe three things. Like you can only have one egg, so that's the good news. You could have up to two young, but
you can only have one school.
You can only have one school.
You can have more young.
If you
have a school there, you can have infinite
true.
numbers of young there.
Yeah.
It's just one school.
One school. So it can get there. And then the other thing we tended to forget is when we want to play a fish card to our tableau, you're supposed to put one of your little diver meeples at the very top left of your board.
The gray area.
Yeah, it's like a gray column, and that's where you put your diver when you want to play a fish card. Any other use, well, the other use of your diver is to start at the top of a column and move the diver literally down into the depths. We never forgot that because that's how you track what card you're activating in order. But we would always forget, almost always, to put one up when playing a card. I mean, it's the only two uses for your divers, but just saying, I kind of wish it was at the bottom of the board somehow so it just wasn't so...
Far away from you?
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Well, that and you started collecting all your divers at the bottom, so it's weird that it has this one spot that's on the opposite end of the board.
Right. I mean, they did it for consistency because you use the three zones on the bottom to hold them, so they didn't want to cut into one of those zones to make this is a play fish zone, but I'm just saying it makes it a little difficult.
Yeah.
All those relatively minor but could be issues, so just things to think about. What the game does right, it is all open information, which has been fantastic.
So you can't keep your card secret
Right.
if I want to know.
Exactly.
What's in your hand?
Sorry, what's in your wallet?
Yeah.
Sorry, that just... Okay. So you can't ask.
Fish are in my wallet.
Fish are in your
for some
wallet.
reason.
You threw me off on that one. There is...
Oh, and a sand dollar.
In a sand dollar. One of the great things is as the evolution of wingspan and wormspan and now finspan, the graphic design has finally really improved. The iconography is really clean and clear and distinct. You know what it needs to play it. You know what zone it needs to go in. You do know what column it needs to go in. It's just where that's located.
Yeah. Now the art does go over, some of the boxes, but they made sure that
it doesn't cover the icons.
Right.
And I saw one fin that got close to the
it was
name.
A swordfish. It was in between.
Well, there's
two
that one,
things.
but at the top, there was one that had a fin that went up right below the name, but it did not touch the name. But I will still say some of those can be distracting when you've got fins that kind of bracket iconography in a box, or it's just a little distracting, but it is a lot better than the other ones where you did actually have a fin cover up an icon or words or things like that. So it has gotten better. Oh, right. And size of the fish is done by a tail icon, and they did three very distinct designs. Basically, the lighter the design, the smaller the fish, the more dark, the filled in one is the bigger fish. This is also going to be a lower cognitive load than wingspan or wormspan. So if there were people that you were
never played any of the span games.
Right. This one is going to be the easiest one to introduce cognitively. It is is more streamlined. So that's good.
It's just some fish are pretty ugly.
Yeah, some of the fish are, yeah,
Creepy looking.
they really are. So speaking about teaching, the player aid is got to be one of the best ones I've seen in a board game. It will really make it easy to teach this game. The one side is how you read a fish card, which is a lot of information, but it breaks it down beautifully. And then the other side is all the icons and how you do things. So it is really great. And lastly, the color player pieces, they're okay. They're not the greatest, but it also doesn't matter because you literally just need 6 tokens because they only go on your board.
Yeah, versus like Wingspan where you like lost one of your cubes and it went to score the goal. This one, when it comes to scoring the goal, it tells you grab the score pad, score it right then and there. So you're not even using your color pieces to mark that. You're only using your little divers to dive on your board.
And I will say they are small. So if they do present a mobility challenge because they are tiny, you just need 6 other markers of some kind, maybe large discs, that way they stack easy, or whatever.
Basic pawns.
Basic pawns, it doesn't matter. You just need 6 pieces. They just go on your board.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is everything. So conclusion.
For 2 players, would you recommend?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you might want to tweak it a little bit with that 3-point, like to not do the 3-point for the weekly goals. But otherwise, I feel like it's a pretty good experience.
Yeah, I think it's excellent at 2 players, especially with the lighter cognitive load. I can spend finally more time taking interest in other players because that was often the problem with many of the Span games when it came to, do I care what other people do? And usually it was like, no, because I'm too busy.
Yeah,
with this game,
much.
it's light enough that I was like, oh, what are you doing over there? And you're like, well, I'm really in the depths. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yep. It is a lot more interesting. And I think that also makes it a much easier player count to teach.
Yeah.
To have a expert player teach, a beginner or someone who's interested in it, because you can have more one-on-one time and it's not going to take away from the experience of the game, because as much as I say the fish cards are overwhelming, that's the only complicated part of the game. Unlike, again, the other ones where the Wormspan had the caves that could be more cognitive load.
Yeah, the Wingspan had dice. You had to roll for food and figure that out. And, and manage all the food different types.
Oh, yeah. So this is much better.
Yeah.
Okay, and
accessibility.
It's going to be a mostly yes. Again, I think there's a lot of minor problems, and probably the biggest problem is going to just be the tall vertical boards.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for space and people with short arms.
Yeah, I think when it comes to all the information that it presents, they finally really dialed in what works for a Span game. And I mean, that was a massive amount of effort that goes into boiling it all down to something that you can easily look at and it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because so many of the other ones had so many other things going on, right down to, do I even have to pay attention to what the picture looks like?
Oh yeah, is the bird looking left or right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was not so fun.
Right. So I like the fact that they really dialed it all in.
Right.
But like you said, the verticality of the board is probably the biggest challenge to overcome.
Yep.
All right. That'll do it for us. And Sarah?
Yes.
Since the divers never come back up in a round, does that mean they're dead?
I try not to think about. They do come back up at the end of the round.
Well, yes, because bodies float.
No, they have plenty of oxygen.
Oh,
they have really big tanks, and the problem is they're so big it sinks them down. They have to use up the oxygen to be. No, wait, oxygen floats, so that wouldn't work. Actually, does oxygen float?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I don't know anything about.
But you have all the weight belts and.
So just think positively. This is not deep sea adventures.
There you go. And why would you ever roll with just one when you could be swimming with two? If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two. That's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.